Good evening. Thank you so much, Tom, for being here tonight to talk to us about adolescent development. I know there are more terms to it than that, and you're going to explain it all. So I'm going to turn it over to you so that you can introduce yourself, tell us what you're going to talk about, and jump right in. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Well, thank you, Sandy, for inviting me. And I should warn the audience that I'm a little bit under the weather, but the show must go on, and especially when it involves adolescents, because if you're a parent or a teacher or anybody who is anywhere near a teen, then you want all the help you can get, probably. So we're going to go forward with this. And so basically, I'm going to give an overview of teen development, and especially in looking at it through a lens of a person who's in a state of transition, that transition from childhood to adulthood. And it's sort of like they have one leg in a child's life and one leg in an adult life. And obviously, not everybody can do the splits. So, so what we try to do is moderate that process a little bit, help it go a little more smoothly for teens. And a very good way to do that is with a model that I developed called the asynchronous development model. And I developed this about, now it's been at least 15 years ago. And I've used it to help youth understand their own development. It's one thing if we understand youth development, but that doesn't necessarily help them navigate that time in their life. So it's a model that can be used by professionals, but it can also be used by lay people, parents, youth. Anybody can apply this model to become more aware of their own developmental challenges. Okay. If you will let me have control, if I don't already. I have control, or you?
You should be good to go. Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm going to try to share my screen as soon as I figure out. I haven't done that. There it is, share screen. And I'm going to go to that screen. And we're going to go up to the beginning. And of course, my menu for Zoom is right on top of where I need to be clicking.
I love it when that happens.
Yes, common problem.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes, sir. Looks
Great.
good.
Okay, so the asynchronous development model is applied for teens and 20-somethings. So even older youth can benefit from this self-knowledge that they acquire from understanding this model. It can be used informally. Just, a parent and their teen can just have a conversation after learning about the model. Any two adults could compare their developmental process. And sometimes it's useful for us adults to go back to our adolescent years and reflect on some of the challenges that we had. And this will give us a better understanding of some of those. So it's a very versatile tool. It can be used by professionals, counselors, teachers, and the term asynchrony is not something I invented. It's been around for a while, and mostly it was used to describe people on the autism scale, high-functioning autism teens who had high intellectual functioning, but often had low functioning or challenges socially. But I have expanded the model to apply to all types of development, 8 different developmental areas. And of course, the ultimate goal is to help people improve their self-esteem. And I think with self-understanding, we're more forgiving about our shortcomings, and we tend to be able to think more positively about how we can address those things without feeling shame or embarrassment that prevents us from talking to people and opening up about it. So if my model doesn't work, I suggest that people find this store. They have lots of other tools. I don't know where it is, actually. It's 4607 somewhere. I found the picture on the internet, of course. But anyway, so to give an overview of developmental theories, this is a very short and simplified version. And for some people that understand or have been trained in youth development, it'll be somewhat of a refresher course. But basically, traditionally, we view development as occurring in stages, distinct stages. And they were defined, normal, in quotes, was defined as how consistently somebody could be compared to be on task or at the right developmental level in that stage of their life. And that works if you're trying to understand a general population, but it's not that effective with individuals because individuals, nobody goes through those stages at the same rate or in quite the same way. The classic examples are Freud, Piaget, and Erikson, and those are pretty familiar names. In a nutshell, Freud looked at psychosexual development. Piaget looked at mostly cognitive development. And Erikson looked at stages of development in terms of the psychosocial issues that people were dealing with at a particular time in their life. Okay. So, for example, in Erikson's model, an infant would be the primary issue for an infant is trust versus mistrust. And the reason that is so important in an infant is because if the quality of care is irregular or not consistent, then it's difficult for that infant to develop this sort of general sense of trust about the world. If care is consistent and meets the needs of the child, then they're going to get a start in life where they're going to be more trusting, more they expect to be things to go well, if you will. And that starts very early in life. And of course, at any stage in life, trust versus mistrust continues to be an issue, but that's when it begins. The other major school of thought about human development and youth development is behaviorism, the sort of patron saint of which is B.F. Skinner. And Skinner believed that every behavior is a reaction to environmental stimuli. So there's a stimulus offered by the environment, and we respond to that stimulus. And so that doesn't have stages in it. It just simply has, in every moment, we're interacting with the environment in some way. Now, it gets a little more complicated. Skinner talked about the internal environment that, we get stimuli from within as well. But basically, pretty much we're creatures in this model that respond to the outside world primarily. And as you might expect, if the stimuli or the experiences that we have are positive, then obviously it's going to be an easier path of development for us. If there's a lot of negative stimuli, then we're going to struggle at various parts of our life, and especially in our adolescent years when we really need to be, as all of you know, whether you're a professional or a parent or anybody, forming an identity is a major aspect of adolescence. And so when you're forming an identity, it really helps to feel secure. Because if you feel secure, you can disclose honestly what you believe, what you think, what you feel. So, and that's the nurture side. I forgot to mention that the other models that have stages is called the nature side. meaning that they are natural stages that all people go through. And the nurture side means nurture as in the sense of the environment being the source of care and the lived experience of people. So the asynchrony, excuse me, the asynchrony model looks at both the external and the internal environment. And so it's both nature and nurture driven. And those internal and external forces are at work constantly to shape our view of the world, to have us, be reacting to the point where we're going to behave in one way or another to sort of get us in motion. I like to think of emotions, for example, as energy in motion, basically. And so, whoops, sorry. So I'm going to let, I sometimes I play around with animation, so I'm going to let this gentleman explain a little bit more about the asynchrony model.
Hi, I'm Aoli. I love to teach people new things. My friends say I love teaching so much that I put the owl in knowledge. I'm going to tell you about a new idea that will help you understand your development, especially during the transition from adolescence to adulthood. The new word of the day is asynchrony. When we put an A in front of a word, it means the opposite. So asynchrony means not in sync or out of balance. You actually apply this term every day if you send text messages. Texting is asynchronous communication because there may be a delay before you receive a response to your text message. Human development is similar in that one area of development may take longer or be delayed compared to other areas. For example, a teen may be advanced physically and look older than his age, but emotionally, he may not be at the level of his peers. Another teen might be behind her peers physically, but she may be ahead of her peers intellectually. Asynchrony can affect our motivation. If someone feels too far behind, they may stop trying. They might give up. Or they may feel a lot of pressure and they might try to catch up by taking shortcuts. For example, they might start doing adult things like smoking or drinking because they want to feel more grown up. Hopefully, what they will do is step up. This means coming up with a plan and taking the steps to grow and seeking the help needed to make the plan work. So it's very helpful if you know your own developmental profile, which I call a developmental selfie. We will be looking at 8 different areas of development. They are physical, emotional, cognitive, academic, social, sexual, moral, and career. Today, we will learn how to estimate your level of development in each of these areas. Most importantly, you will see how asynchronous development can affect your behavior and your attitude about life. Buckle your seatbelts now, because you're about to experience that roller coaster ride we call adolescence. I want you to get as much as possible out of this presentation, and I sincerely want you to have a better understanding of the importance of having more balance in your development. Well, goodbye for now, and I hope I will see you again soon.
So according to Owley, our fellow expert, asynchrony is sort of a key to understanding adolescents and those who are in their 20s. We can be ahead in some ways and behind in other ways in our development. And that includes not only in comparison to our peers, but also comparing us to ourselves. We can be like one area of my development might be far behind another one. And I'll try to show later how that has implications for the kinds of issues that we have to struggle with. I want to make it clear everyone experiences asynchrony. It's normal. Nobody develops at the same rate in all the different developmental areas. So what really matters is exactly how or in what way are we out of sync as an individual, and to what degree we're out of sync with our peers or ourselves. Now, sometimes we think about, and this happens in schools, people get labeled, kids get labeled. We even do it with our own children. Sometimes there's one that we think behaves better than the others. I don't believe, for the most part, that we have good or bad kids. We just have kids. Now, there are some kids who are born with some kind of pathology that sort of like, no matter what you do, it's maybe not going to make any difference. There are some genetic, illnesses or conditions that get passed on. So I don't want to ever say, I don't want to say every kid is redeemable, but I say the vast, vast majority of kids are able to grow and develop in a positive way. So it's not about good or bad kids. It's not about pathology. This model, I mean, is not about those things. It's not about wasted potential. Sometimes in schools, kids get the lecture, oh, you have so much potential. I like to think that everybody does the best they can with what they have at the time. And so potential is just a way of saying you should be better. And that's not a message that I like to deliver to youth. My message to them is, what is happening? Why is it happening? And what can we do about it? So people do the best they can with what they have at the time. So let's say bad kids are good kids under development most of the time. And one of the things that I try to practice in my personal life, and this is hard for all of us, but that we don't know how hard people are trying. They could be putting forth a tremendous amount of effort, and we don't think we're seeing the results fast enough, and we think maybe they're not trying. So we just can't assume that they're not trying. Maybe they don't have the tools. Maybe they're not motivated at that time, or something else is distracting them. But I think there's a certain amount of having to believe in people if you really want to be an agent of change. That's a little story here. One day I was power washing my driveway, and somebody who was staying with us looked at it afterwards and said that it didn't look any different. And so I just in case that would happen, I power washed all of it but this one spot so they could see the difference. And so, sometimes you look at something and the differences aren't obvious, but change is sometimes slow, but when it happens, it's a wonderful thing. And at some point we will see the difference. And you can be a good kid in a bad crowd or a bad kid in a good crowd. And I like to think of this as an important idea, because I was a good kid in a bad crowd. I mean, we were a wild bunch, but I kept them in line. I kept them from going too far. I was kind of a guardrail for my peers. And on the other hand, you could be a bad kid in a good crowd, and you could be the one sort of leading them into temptation, if you will, or being the one that sort of instigates trouble. And so, either way, that person, the kid, even the so-called bad kid, and I always use that in quotes, but even the bad kid in a good crowd is learning something from that good crowd that they will be able to apply if they have the right support. Okay. So I'm very optimistic about what youth are capable of doing. Okay, well, I want to look at here some pressure sources for developmental stress. One, of course, is the classic social comparison. Several psychologists and social thinkers have made the case that peers tend to compare themselves to decide what's normal. So they compare themselves to other people in their cohort to decide what's normal. And, you know, it would be nice if we all had a perfectly clear compass as to what is appropriate behavior and what is good behavior. Most of us have some of that, but we don't always have it. And under certain conditions, our compass can sort of be thrown off by the magnetic pull of classic peer pressure, which, by the way, just a little aside here, a lot of practitioners now, instead of calling it peer pressure, they're calling it the peer effect. Okay. And the reason that they're starting to change the way they think about that is because a lot of that pressure isn't coming directly from the peers. A lot of it's coming from within, based on the perception that an individual has about their peers. So it's not altogether just one directional. Another source of pressure is the idealized self, the person that we think we should be. And everybody has that. Sometimes it's generated from our own ideas. Sometimes it's sort of imposed on us by others. And if we don't have a strong identity or a strong ego, then sometimes people can make us feel that we're very far away from that ideal person. Hopefully it's our own idea. And of course, as an adolescent, they are more likely to be influenced by others, including adults, at that point. So, that is more of a challenge in many cases for them. Although I think you'd agree there are some adults who really do not live up to what they say they are. We see that every day. So it's a human problem. And a third source of pressure is parental input. Things that parents actually say, or sometimes it's very subtle and they apply. Things like you come home with your report card, you say, hey, I got a B in this really difficult class. And the parent says, instead of congratulations, they say, well, what are you going to do to get an A the next time? Okay. And just think about that child if they gave 100%, and that's the best they were capable of right then. So even though, parents mean well, they want to be cheerleaders. They want to help their children aspire to better things, but timing is very crucial in terms of parental input. And some others, since we have an audience of one here, Sandy, can you think, I'm going to put you on the spot. Can you think of another source of pressure for adolescents as far as their image of themselves? And I know it's just, being put on the spot.
Yeah, my mind is blank. The thing I thought of was siblings, but I feel like that would probably go under peer pressure.
That is a crucial one. Siblings are very important. And even more so if parents compare siblings to each other. And one other one is the media, of course, and social media is a great influence now. And that can be good or bad. I mean, we are a little bit concerned about social media, but there are a lot of positive things that kids learn on social media too. And with the right guidance, I think they can be less vulnerable to the negative side of social media. And I think, when I say media, I'm not just talking social media, I talk about movies, television shows, whatever input they get from those sources. Okay, so the first area of development is physical development. And that this chart on the screen shows a worldwide study that indicated that physical appearance is the #1 concern of teens, and this is internationally. And and that's not the case for every teen, but on average, it's the highest one reported. And the other things that go under physical development are: am I happy with my body? Can I do the things with it I want to do? If I like sports, can I perform well enough that I'm happy with it, and so on and so forth. So overall physicality, you could say. The next area of development is emotional development, and that has to do with how we manage emotions and how we cope with stress. And this happiness chart, is sometimes people react to this with a bit of surprise. So I want to be careful how I explain it. 50%, this is on average now, 50% of happiness has to do with genetics. Only 10% has to do with our personal circumstances, whether we're rich or poor, or whether we're doing well in school or not doing well in school. The situational things are only about 10 to 12%. Conscious effort accounts for about 40% of feeling generally happy. And some people see that 50% and they say, oh no, I look at my family and my chances of being happy aren't very good. But 40% is a lot in terms of a window of opportunity to improve your level of overall satisfaction with life and your emotional well-being. And there are a lot of tools available to help us get there. So that is actually good news. But clearly, if depression runs in your family, or alcoholism, or anxiety, or whatever, that genetic component is a big component, and sometimes it has to be addressed with medication. Other times it can be addressed with just counseling, or sometimes people just change the environment and do better in different settings. So, but the good news is that 40% of that window of 40% is a good one. And if we take advantage of the tools, we can really increase the odds that we're going to be happy campers. Cognitive development is next, the next scale I look at, and that is, do we like to stimulate and challenge our mind? And I'm not going to do an exercise with that, but basically is, do you like to solve complex puzzles? Do you like to play video games that are complicated and require you to really think? Do you read books about ideas? Do you like to discuss ideas? Do you like to, in other words, do you like to develop your mind? And do you sort of gravitate to that? Or not? Some people are less inclined to do that or to enjoy that. So we'll bypass the little test there. Academic development is different than cognitive development. You can be very smart or very highly developed cognitively, but you could still perform poorly in an academic environment. And that's because academic development has to do with developing a set of skills and having certain characteristics and qualities that you can refine. And so it's very important to understand the difference. We all know kids who are very smart, and we just can't understand why they're not doing well in school, and other kids who are, average intelligence or so, and they seem to really shine in that environment. They figure out what they have to do. They learn how to perform in that situation. And they plan ahead. I'm going to let the audience look at that for a minute and see if that person planned ahead or not. Next is social relational development, and that has to do with getting along with others and developing the ability to have close relationships. And it includes things like social comfort. Are you, comfortable in a social situation? Are you a person who tends to initiate contact, or do you wait for others to do that? Are you able to self-disclose? Once you know somebody, are you able to open up and talk about your feelings and let them know who you are sort of deep down? And humility and gratitude I threw in there because what I find is that people who rate highly on the social development scale tend to be grateful and appreciative of others. And I have a whole video about that. I'm going to ask your advice, Sandy. Should I show the video or should we move along? Because there's still quite a bit to cover.
How long is the video?
I think it's about 5 minutes, 7 minutes.
If you think that it's great information, which I don't think you would include it if it didn't have great
Yeah.
information.
I think it's very good, and you can always edit or they can fast forward if
Okay.
but I think it really makes the point about the importance of gratitude.
Sounds good.
And I skipped right over it. Here we go.
Shut up. What?
I'm going to warn people. I stopped it deliberately. I'm going to warn people there's some language in here or maybe that might make some folks uncomfortable. So you are forewarned. Almost forgot.
Shut up. What? Wait. That makes me so embarrassed.
What makes you happy? Having fun? Hanging out with friends? Delicious food? Making money? Well, consider this. Psychologists have scientifically proven that one of the greatest contributing factors to overall happiness in your life is how much gratitude you show. Yeah? Think about that. Go ahead and marinate on it for a second. You can thank me later if you want. It'll make you feel better according to this study. You go ahead and click on it and read it if you want. Or you can keep watching because we read it. We thought it might be fun to test out for ourselves. We gathered a selection of volunteers to act as our subjects. First, we gave them a test. They didn't know what we were looking for, but it gave us a pretty good idea of their current level of happiness. We asked them to close their eyes and think of somebody who was really influential in their life, somebody who did something really amazing or important for them. We had them write down as much as they could about why this person was so important. Now, a lot of them thought at this point the experiment was over, until we really put them on the spot and tried to get them to call that person and read what they wrote about them. Thank you, Jessica. We're going to have you call your mother. So who is that right person for you?
Person is my sister, Erica.
We're going to give Erica a call.
Okay.
Who'd you end up picking?
Friend of mine, Craig Ames. Her name is Dora.
My college accounting instructor.
Really? Is this somebody you're still in touch with today?
No, I'm assuming that he's passed on.
That's a shame.
Great beyond.
You up for it?
Yes.
What would you say if we called up Dora?
Oh, we can try, but she lives in Britain.
In Britain?
Oh, no, number by heart. This is awful.
That's fine. I don't know my mom's number by heart.
If it's true that those who are going on are looking down on us, maybe you'd be a nice hit and scratch.
Hey, sweetheart.
Hey, how you doing? You got a second? Where you at? In the hotel?
I am. I'm in the hotel. You scared me when you asked if I had something's wrong.
No, I'm on like this little TV show, and they told me to talk about the person that influenced me the most, and I picked you, and they're making me call you. They're making me call you.
Oh, wonderful.
Hi, you've reached Craig. I'm not here right now.
At the tone, please record your message.
Oh, come on. Hello? Hi. Erica? It's me.
All right, so I got to read you this paragraph. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead,
All right.
sweetheart.
All right. The person that influenced me the most would be my mother, Marlo Dawson. She is a single mother of 2. She is a very hard worker and dedicated to her family.
Hey Craig, this is Chloe. This is going to be a funny little voicemail, so I hope you enjoy it. I'm so sorry for calling you at 4 o'clock in the morning. I have to read this to you, okay? And you can't say anything, or I don't know. You can respond, but I probably will just keep going. Okay? Is everything okay? Yes, but I have to read this out loud to you.
The person who has had the biggest impact on my life outside of Jesus Christ, who was responsible for my existence, was my college accounting instructor. He had a joy and enthusiasm for his job like no other teacher I have ever known.
I love her to death, and she keeps me going with positive talk. She is a woman that knows what she wants and won't give up until it is achieved.
Oh, so good. I'm not the doctor, but so beautiful. I have to say that it's wonderful. I first met Craig on an independent feature film set in Whitefish, Montana. I recently have been sending Craig a lot of positive thoughts as he suffered a series of health problems. Despite his medical problems, he's continued to work and take pleasure in the small things in life, like sitting quietly with his wife, Janine, on the porch. Erica is my older sister and my best friend. Sometimes it even feels like we are twins. She's my #1 fan and my #1 supporter. She makes me happy. She has a kid and many children. I will love her more than her kids. Okay, maybe not. I will never forget when she flew 3,000 miles at the drop of a phone call to save me from a breakup. And being blessed with having a son like you. I love you. Bye. Why did you do that? Thank you for thinking about me. Bye, sweetie. And then they're like, here, you're gonna write this letter. And then I wrote like this whole long ass letter, which I like don't write. And then all of a sudden they're like, hey, guess what? Now we're gonna call her and you're gonna read her this letter. And I was like, what the
Before we let them go, we gave our subjects one more happiness test. Now, we mixed up and rephrased the questions so they didn't know they were taking the same test twice. For those who took the time to actually write something down but couldn't make the phone call for whatever reason, we saw happiness increase between 2 and 4%. Good, but not exactly mind-blowing. Now, for those who actually picked up the phone and personally expressed their gratitude, we saw increases between 4 and 19%. So either way, expressing your gratitude will make you a happier person. But you want to know something really interesting? The person who experienced the biggest jump in happiness was the least happy person who walked in the door. What does that mean? That means if you're having a particularly tough time, trying this out will more likely have a greater impact on you. Trust me. I'm in a lab coat. In fact, while you're at it, film it and upload it to us, and we'll do something awesome with it. I'm Julian, and this has been The Science of Happiness.
Could you hear that okay?
Yes, it broke up a couple times, but because of the captions, the subtitles, it was fine. That was
Okay.
really good.
All right. Okay. Thanks. Yeah, I like that video. It really kind of, in a very straightforward way, makes the point, I think. Alrighty. So the next area of development is sexual development, and basically what we're trying to help youth understand at this point is it's not like such sexual education or teaching about what's right or wrong or that sort of thing. It has more to do with do they have enough information? Do they feel comfortable with what they're doing or not doing? And are they do they have somebody they can talk to about that? So and just like the other areas of development, sexual development is very very different for Some people are exposed to sexual situation very early and some much later. So in either case, the most important thing about being a sexual being is being ready for whatever you're about to do. And if you're not ready for it, then we want to help youth understand it's better to wait and to wait until the right time. So, and then moral ethical development has to do with our code, sort of our personal code of ethics. And the most important thing about that is whether or not it's internal. If it's truly your own moral code, then you're much more likely to abide by it. If you're trying to live somebody else's moral code, then you are vulnerable to going astray or not conforming to it, or being very confused and feeling a lot of pressure. And this is a case where, you know, sometimes very kids who have high moral aspirations end up in trouble because they're influenced by others. And I'll tell you, Sandy, what I say to parents very often is that if you can control your kids' moral behavior, then somebody else can too. They have to be able to do that themselves. They have to learn to do that themselves.
That's so true.
Okay. And then lastly is our career development. Not that it's the least important, but it's something that some youth are already thinking about and others haven't really explored a career path. In a nutshell, our career development has to do with how much we know about ourselves and how much we know about the world of work, what certain jobs are actually like. We may think we want to grow up and do whatever, but we may not know what that professional person or that worker actually does. And so we try to put those together and we end up with informed choice. And you know, I've known 16-year-olds that had a vision of exactly what they wanted to do, and they went on and did it. And I know 25-year-olds that still haven't really sorted out for themselves what they really want to do for the rest of their lives or for the long term. Okay, so I am going to mute it for just a second while I set up the board. What are you seeing right now?
Your desktop icons.
Okay, I'm going to I want you to see what the camera shows. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then I guess it should show what I want.
It should, but your camera's off.
Okay, yeah, I see that. I just have to, I'm looking at this at an angle and I can't see very good. Oh, there we go. Start it over there. There we go. Now you should see the board.
Yep.
Okay. So what I want to do is show a couple examples of asynchrony. In other words, individuals who are quite out of sync in their development and how that affects them. And I know you probably can't read the items at the top of the board very well, so I'll just point out what they are quickly. Physical, emotional, cognitive, academic, social, sexual, moral, ethical, and career. And I'm going to take a couple of examples. One, some of you may know I was a college counselor. And during that time, I met a young man who was, in terms of his social development, he was very low on the scale. He could not initiate a conversation in a social situation. He pretty much kept to himself. He he really didn't even use the telephone to text or to call people or do anything. So he was very isolated. And he came to me, excuse me, in the counseling center at UTC. And he pointed out that he said, now my career development is very, when we started talking about the asynchrony model, he said, my career development is very high. I know exactly what I want to do. I want to be a biology teacher. Okay. So he had very low scores or a level of development in his social domain, but very high in his career. But unfortunately, you can see that in order to be a teacher, you have to have some social skills. So in that case, the remedy was obvious and he was very motivated. So he joined a social skills group that I was running. And he then started to learn just some of the basic things about socializing. We would go out to dinner as a group and he would, order a meal and he would have conversation at the table with other group members and so on. And one thing, the university actually allowed us to take the students on a cruise on the river. And their assignment was to introduce themselves to a stranger and have a conversation. And he was able to do that. He felt very proud of himself after that. Well, it turns out I ran into him, excuse me, a couple of years later, and he told me he was in grad school. And I said, well, how's it going? He said, well, I'm actually an assistant teacher too. I'm teaching a class at the college level, and I'm really enjoying it. And I'm really enjoying my interaction with the students in the class. And so it was a real success story. But I would like to take all the credit. But the truth is that he was ready, and he knew that there was a contradiction between his goal and his social abilities, and that just wasn't going to work. So long story short, or I think what we can generalize from that is if you can find out what somebody really cares about and help them work on that, then not only can they meet their goal, something really amazing happens then. Some of these other areas go up. Okay. Emotionally, he started to feel better about himself. physically. He started taking better care of himself. He looked, when I first met him, he was very thin and looked emaciated. And when I ran into him that 2 years later, he looked very healthy and fit and happier. So, sometimes we're lucky and it's not that difficult to determine based on the asynchrony model what a person needs. Another another example, and stop me if you have questions or comments, Sandy, along the way. But another student came to me, and she was kind of the opposite. She was a social butterfly in her high school. She was very popular, had a lot of friends, and she was in her second semester, just beginning her second semester in college. And she came to me in tears, and she said that she has not made any friends. She's used to having a lot of friends, and so her, generally speaking, her emotional state was, her development was really being stifled at that point. Her social development had been before that very high, but now it was coming down, and that made her emotionally feel even worse about herself. And so I explored that and found out that she had grown up in a small town and she had the same friends all through grade school, middle school, and high school. So she had this sort of social network of people that she had known since early childhood. And so what we discovered was that she was very good at maintaining relationships. She did not have the skills that are involved in making new relationships. And so we had one appointment, and I scheduled her for 2 weeks later, and she called before that appointment and canceled and talked to me. And she said, "I'm doing great. I've joined a couple clubs and I'm making all kinds of friends." So it was just, figuring out where the asynchrony was. How did things get out of balance, and how can we get them back in balance? And she did very well. I could go on with lots of examples. I think one thing that I want to do more work on is kids who are, we try to work a lot with victims of bullying and people who are physically abused. But I think we also need to focus on the individuals that are the aggressive ones and figure out where's their asynchrony. Maybe they academically they're forced to go to school like everybody else, and it's not a comfortable environment for them. So people are going to sort of gravitate to where they feel most competent. And if being a tough guy is where they feel most in control, then they're going to gravitate to that. There's some kind of need getting met by that. And so if we understand that, we can help them find another area. Maybe let's say they're maybe they're a lot of people who are coaches or in athletics will tell you that a lot of kids who are physically aggressive, if they find a sport that they like, they can sort of get a lot of that energy expressed, and they can do better. Sometimes it's just finding something that they have in common with somebody else, maybe a hobby or something like that, that gives them another way of feeling good about themselves, or feeling that they're, on par with their peers, or not feeling inferior. And sometimes it's just a matter of, they're not doing well in school because they don't have the academic skills, and with some mentoring or coaching, they can improve their academic skills, and that's going to hopefully make them less aggressive. They don't need to prove anything if they're performing at a level that they feel better about. So the main overall idea is that if we're out of sync in some of these areas, it creates pressure. And the way we try to resolve that pressure can result in negative behavior. Let me give you one more example of, I'll just do it verbally, but there were two students. One was an athlete, and a very good athlete, but he was performing poorly in school, and he was intelligent enough. It wasn't that he didn't have the basic ability; it was that he put his energy so much into his sport. He was actually was a football player, and he worked out so much, and he practiced so hard that he neglected his studies. And so the way I discovered this was I was teaching a class, and he turned in a paper, an essay that was assigned, and I started reading the essay, and it turned out that it was an essay that, it sounded familiar. And so I went back to my files from a couple semesters earlier, and I found the exact same paper written by another student. I mean, the only thing that was different was the name at the top of the paper. And they didn't even try to hide it. Probably didn't know, that I'd ever discover that or something. But it turned out it was asynchrony that was the culprit, because the kid that gave him the paper was a kid that was low on the social scales. And here's this popular football player, and they formed what I call a symbiotic relationship. He was able to go to parties and meet a lot of people because he was, going along with this popular football player. And in exchange for that, he was willing to violate his own code of ethics to write a paper for that football player. And you could say, well, it's because he didn't have a strong moral code. I don't believe that. I think he had a good moral code. I think he was just he had such hunger for social contact that it overrode his moral code. So he was underdeveloped socially and made vulnerable. The other guy was underdeveloped academically and made vulnerable because in order to do the thing he cares about, he has to keep his grades up to a certain level, right? So they were kind of an accident waiting to happen. And so my voice is running out, and I think I've covered the asynchronous model sufficiently. So I hope you all enjoyed it, and you certainly can get contact information from Sandy if you want to learn more about the asynchronous development model. Thank you so much, Sandy, for having me do this.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tom, for your time and for explaining this to us tonight. And definitely, if there are any questions, I can get you in contact with Tom and he can share some more information. This has been very informative, and I hope that we can do this again and maybe build on it in the future on another workshop, maybe.
Okay, good idea. So turn off the recording.